evening, everyone, and welcome to the School Committee, Finance Committee, and Select Board Joint Meeting today, January 21st, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Just as a preliminary matter, my name is Peter Carlson. I'm the chair of the Town of Grafton Select Board. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. Select Board members, would I please call your name? Please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeFazio.
DeFazio is present.
Mr. Often.
Mr. Often's present.
Mr. Prisby.
Prisby here.
Ms. Roy. And I see Ms. Roy's just joining now. Peter Carlson is here. School committee members, when I please read your name, please answer in the affirmative that you're present. Ms. Often.
Here.
Ms. Marr.
Here.
Ms. Connolly.
Jennifer Connolly here.
Ms. Spinney.
Here.
Mr. Rafi.
Here.
Thank you. Finance committee members, all those who are present can hear me, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Haddad.
Present.
Ms. Houle.
Present.
Mr. Kusher. Ms. Robbins.
Here.
Ms. McHugh. Mr. Swenson. Mr. Smith.
Smith here.
Mr. Jefferson.
Jefferson here.
Mr. Shinoy.
Shinoy here.
Thank you. Staff members, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Temporary Town Administrator Carter Terenzini.
Present.
Superintendent of Schools Dr. James Cummings.
Here.
And
Push
Finance
is here
Committee.
now, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. And Finance Committee Assistant Ms. Fiacco.
Present.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome
We
to the
also have our Director of Finance, Anita Patel.
Ms. Patel. Sorry.
I'm
Welcome.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Finance Committee, School Committee, and Select Board is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020 due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted at the town's website at www.graftonfnia.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, there will be featured question and sessions for the public to use. For this meeting, there are 3 boards is convened via Zoom and is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees may be participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording and viewed by the public. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are going to be available at the town's website when final minutes are posted. Unless otherwise noted, the public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, note otherwise. Just some basic ground rules, please, to follow. Please permit me to introduce each of the speakers that are going to be on the agenda tonight, and after they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any type of comment, questions, or motions if necessary. Please hold your name. Please hold on until your name is called. Please also remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If members wish to engage with other members, please do so through me, the chair, taking care to identify yourself and try not to talk over one another. Finally, if for any reason that there should be a vote taken tonight, it will be conducted by roll call vote. Thank you very much, everybody. And as we go into our first part of the agenda item tonight, I want to thank everybody for making it out tonight on this Thursday. I would like to just kind of preface that the purpose of tonight's meeting was a request from the school department to have a conversation about FY22 budget considerations. Tonight, we're going to hear from the school department. We're going to listen to and see what their challenges are for FY22 and potentially for budgeting and beyond. And then would like to move the conversation over to taking that information and discussing with Finance Committee this evening and with the school department and school committee about Grafton's financial policy for FY22 and beyond as it relates to available funding sources for our budget. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Often, Chair of the School Committee, and Superintendent of Schools, Dr. James Cummings, and then we will follow up with a presentation and update from Temporary Town Administrator Carter Terenzini. Thank you. Ms. Often.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for having us and coming out tonight. And I'm going to turn it right over to Dr. Cummings and he's going to share a couple of slides that he's prepared.
Yes, so I just have one slide that we will use. All right. So just a brief history. Over the past few months, the school committee has been moving forward with the development of the FY22 budget. The budget figure that we've been working off of is based on the 60% share number that was provided to us by Carter. The committee totally understands the rationale for that number, given all of the variables, all of the unknowns, the 60-40 split. Myself and the committee understands. That number represents $586,000 less than what was planned for post override. So back in June, obviously a lot's happened since last June. Thankfully, our use of COVID monies for tech, the use of those monies is fairly limited, but one of the things that we could purchase was tech hardware. So the fact that we were able to purchase so much hardware is going to negate our need to purchase tech hardware for FY22. So that's about $300,000. That's going to leave us with a $286,000 challenge instead of that full 586, which is great. There are two major variables that are in play. We've got the possible provision of additional federal COVID monies. And that's potentially a very positive variable. A potential negative variable for us is needs regarding personnel costs that we don't know exactly what we need until kind of we turn the corner in terms of COVID and return students back to school. But I would fully anticipate that we are going to need additional supports in the area of reading and math in particular. Those obviously jump out. And the way that we got to tonight's meeting was at the last school committee meeting prior to asking the committee to vote on that number and the best thinking we have around what those negative implications will be if we have to reduce the planned budget by 286. The school committee brought up the idea of meeting so that all three boards are on the same page, at least in terms of preliminary discussions as we move into the spring and start to make real decisions regarding the budget. And with that, I can take any questions you may have.
Mr. Haddad?
Yeah, Jay, have you determined what that 286 impact is yet, or is it too early to tell?
I obviously, to get the board's vote, they're voting on that bottom line number, but I'm putting my best thinking out there. It would be three undetermined, but three existing positions. We would have, with the override, what we had built into that planned FY22 budget, you might recall, is bringing back three positions that were cut in previous years. Two that were cut, actually, two around math and literacy support. And then we were going to add that second elementary counselor. Last year, we hired our first elementary counselor, and we'd add another this year. That was the plan. Obviously, that plan was put together for the most part pre-COVID. So those five positions, three existing, two new, and then that left, off the top of my head, say 35,000, and we would further reduce our small scale capital monies as well as 10% or $10,000 in decrease in supplies across the district. So that's our standing plan. Certainly not set in stone, but that's what we would do.
Mr. Haddad?
Mr. Carlson,
Yes,
follow up?
yes, go ahead.
Yep. So I know, Carter has done a great job putting together budget estimates and revenue estimates, met with the finance committee. We supported his rationale on moving forward in terms of how he came about his revenue estimates for next year and how he came about deciding how much of the override he was going to commit to fiscal year 22. And the finance committee was pretty much unanimous in support of that. However, taking a look at what Jay and the school committee have put forward and understanding that the whole COVID pandemic has really caused a lot of issues with regards to revenues and the like. When we voted the override back last March, it was March 5th, I think, when we all got together and we decided we wanted to do a 5-year override. That was a week before everything really went crazy. And thankfully, the voters of Grafton still supported the override. And we had talked about a 5-year override. It seems to me that I think the decision that we need to make tonight is to determine whether or not we want the override to last 5 years or try to shrink it back somehow so that we can meet the needs of the school department. Because the main goal with that override was to fund our schools and our fire department. And we've accomplished the fire department funding in this year's budget. And I think we need to stay committed to the school department. So I'd like the select board to consider increasing the amount set aside of the override from the 575 that Carter has in his projections to meet the needs of the school department. And that may shrink it down to 3 or 4 years, but there may be a recovery in revenues. There may be the marijuana money finally coming to fruition in fiscal year 23. And we might be able to have less reliance on the override in future years to still extend it out 5 years. So my recommendation to this board tonight, and to the finance committee and the school committee and the select board, would be to consider shrinking down the length of the override because of COVID and meet the needs of our school department to keep our schools functioning strongly. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Mr. Haddad. Next up here, we've got Mr. Fazio, followed by Mrs. Spin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question for Jay, and that is, you mentioned additional COVID monies. Do you have any idea what that would be? Is there a cap on what would be anticipated at all?
It's pure speculation at this point. We
Okay.
do know that we're going to get, we think, Anita, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was in the top, around just shy of 300,000, relatively short term. We know we need those monies to cover the existing staffing that we have related to COVID just to get through the end of June this year. So that money we know is tied up and there's nothing extra. We have enough PPE, we're in good shape, more or less, with tech. We're making that work. So we're right now looking pretty good through the end of this year. There's been talk about, I haven't seen anything beyond speculation, that the Biden administration is going to put out another round of separate federal funding. I don't know the timing of that. I don't know the amount, and we don't know the parameters. I mean,
Okay.
ideally that would be provided and we'd have like a full year to spend that. And if you really want to get dreamy on this, you'd hope that the uses would be widened, where we could hire, even if we have the kids back, we could now hire staff using those monies to address any supports, catch up, you know, what have you. But that's pure speculation at this point. That would be a game changer if that came to fruition.
Understood. And thank you for that answer, because I think, you know, what it shares not only with this committee, but the public, is that is just not funding we can rely on at all at this point. And that's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
And then my second question is related actually to the tech hardware, and just confirming that that is part of capital. Is that correct?
No, the tech hardware expenses that we've incurred have been wholly through our own budget, not capital related.
Okay.
To typically take place, that paired with COVID monies.
Okay, so where I'm going with that, because I was trying to solve that problem in my head too, was we had a discussion a few months ago. I think it was right around town meeting. I sent Jay, you an email, and I think Laura, and it went to Anita at some point about our Green Communities grant, and the fact that there's $250,000 worth of capital funding that I really think that we should execute to get for the schools. And so again, I understand that it would be likely used for capital, But wanted to bring this up in this conversation to see if, you know, there would be, of course, I know you take the money, but just wondering if, you know, this would help at all. It seems, you know, $286,000 and a $250,000 grant. I just wanted to bring that into the conversation. And then the last point I had to make is regarding our trash budget. And, you know, I know that the rest of the select board knows we're going to be having some detailed discussion on our trash budget and what, you know, how that's going to impact, you know, the money that we can help support the schools with. So just a comment. So thank you.
Before we go to you, Mrs. Spinney, Ms. Patel, did you want to respond to some of Mr. Fazio's questions?
I did. To follow up on the Green Communities money, I actually have been in touch with Leah Cameron regarding those fundings already. So I actually gave her the list of all of our projects that we have that would fall under that grant funding. And she said that I believe in the next few months, she's going to be meeting with Jay and myself regarding that money and filing for an application for that as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Mrs. Spinney, and then followed by Mr. Shinoy, and then I believe Ms. Wu had her hand up next.
I'm going to hold my comments till after Carter's presentation.
All right, Mr. Shinoy, did you have a question with regards to Dr. Cummings?
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Cummings, just to make sure, the 300,000 that you said that you are hearing about, was that speculation, or is 300,000 going to be available for taking care of the school expenses related to COVID until June?
The 300,000 represented monies that annually we build into our budget to purchase tech hardware for students, for staff.
Yeah.
We purchased that like off schedule because we received these COVID monies. And
Sure.
that's one of the things we can spend it on. So because we spent it within the last 3 months, obviously in just a few months, we don't need to reinvest. So we can, that COVID monies will save us that expense in FY22. Does that make sense?
No, I understand that you don't have to buy new technology hardware, but what I'm trying to make sure is that the school has enough COVID money to last until end of June. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Joy. Ms. Holt, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Dr. Cummings. So 2 questions. The first one is in terms of all that technology, which is the majority of it, of course, is one-to-one. How does that affect our cost of maintenance and replacement going forward? So the good news is Grafton was one of the fortunate districts. We already had a significant amount of one-to-one, but I don't think anyone had been planning on doing one-to-one for kindergartners and first graders a year ago.
Yeah. We have one-to-one. We were actually a little behind in terms of one-to-one. We had it at the high school. We were moving down to 7 and 8. And we're now down to 6th grade and up. We definitely do not have, that's it for one-to-one.
Okay.
Even that expansion though, Irene, is going to be a challenge. I would love to tell you, oh my gosh, we've got it planned out 2 years ahead. We definitely do not.
Okay.
That is over time, that's going to be more of a burden to obviously, you know, keep just staffing wise in terms of technology and replacement is going to eventually become a cost, but we aren't a district in many, there are some that went from just a few grades to the entire district. We went from really 7 through 12 to 6 through 12.
Okay. Okay. Then the second question is, and I've kind of lost track of what the state was doing with the MCAS testing. I know that for last year, obviously they weren't doing MCAS in April. Are there any savings from not having to administer the test?
They are definitely having the test.
Okay, so they've come back to that.
Correct.
Figures. Okay.
They are.
All right, any other questions? Did I call on everybody who had a question? Jay, I had one question. So from what I'm understanding and seeing your presentation, you're going to utilize safer grant monies to offset the tech purchase this year, but you won't be using those monies for next year. Are you going to be able to put a footnote or a placeholder in your budget? Because if those are funds that you typically have in any given fiscal year,
Sure.
How will we recognize that going beyond FY22? So when you start planning for FY23, are we, we're going to see that few $100,000 come back into your next request?
We've definitely talked about that. We recognize the need. We have not figured out the perfect way to do it. We're certainly gonna, if it was just an asterisk, the FY23 budget is just gonna be covered in asterisks. So we're gonna have to figure out, a front page that lists everything, COVID to comparing it to post-COVID. It's gonna be tricky, and
Yeah.
we're all gonna have to figure out a way to do that effectively and with a high degree of transparency. I haven't figured out yet how to exactly do that.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions? If not, we can go to Mr. Terenzini, our temporary town administrator. Did you want to go over some of the latest figures?
Yeah, Peter, if you want to put one of the slides up, the green bar slide first, and then we can go to the 3 assumption slide. Okay, and if we can scroll down. So in simplest terms, you have approximately new revenues of about, if we can keep going down there, about $1.9 million altogether. Basically, that comes down to about $1 million, which is what you can increase under Prop 2.5. You've got about 550,000 in new growth that we're projecting. We brought the override in over 4 years. And then because of a change in estimating local revenues, that flattens it down a little bit. So what we came in at was around $1,866,000, and everyone has seen the math now as to how that was distributed. Peter, if you can go to that slide that Colleen did with just the basic assumptions. So there's 3 assumptions, each of which impacts the total estimate of revenues. The first is we used a 4-year phase in of your remaining 2.35 million of the override. You had 3.2 million. You spent about 900,000 of it, roughly 850,000. And so there's about 2.35 million remaining that can be spread out over whatever period of time you choose. We had heard estimates ranging of 3 years to 5 years for the total override. So by way of example, if you spend that remaining 2.35 over 2 years instead of 4, the 575,000 that we estimated goes to 1.2, which solves the school's issue immediately and some of the town's issue, which we haven't really started to talk about. The second major assumption, and my peers are in different camps on this, is what's going to happen to state aid. So we won't have what's commonly referred to as House 1. The governor has to release it by statute next Wednesday. It'll be up on the websites, maybe even later that day, generally the next day. We have made an assumption that the state aid will be net neutral. That is to say, if they do find a few dollars more, we've assumed that our chargebacks, school choice, charter, MBTA, and the like will go up. And if they cut us, we have made an assumption that our chargebacks will go down. That's a major assumption. Some of my peers are assuming state aid will go down. On the education side, 0, but on the general fund side, 5. I think, Mark can speak to that. He speaks with my colleagues as well. And that's a major assumption. And if that assumption does not hold, quite frankly, we would need to use some of the override just to cover that deficit. The third assumption in here is that previously the town would look at its revenues of the most recent year and kind of make a feeling, do we think they're going up a little bit? Do we think they're going down a little bit? Our projections take a longer range view. They look at 5 years, and then we throw out the high, we throw out the low, we average the 3. And that had the effect this year of actually depressing estimates for local revenues for the coming year. Is it the right thing to do in the long term? I absolutely think it is. Could we pick a different year if you like this approach to implement it? Absolutely. I mean, these are policy decisions for you all to make. So in terms of how we got to the 1.9 million, these are the 3 major assumptions. Do you have 2 safety valves? I think, Peter, the next slide might show that. So if we held 2 safety valves in reserve in doing our estimates, because of that major wild card with the state. The second one was we tried to be fairly conservative on new growth. When you look at our numbers, you'll see you've had some pretty strong years, $700, $900, $1,000, and we've held it down at $550. The second is we have not projected any cannabis revenues whatsoever. You don't have any shops open yet. Possibly they'll be open by July 1. And frankly, if you can get a shop open with robust sales, this is going to be an extremely healthy number in the low 6-figure range. So we had those 3 major assumptions upon which we based the revenues. We had the 2 safety valves that we kind of held back. And of course, the third safety valve is always how many years you want to use to bring the remainder of the override into the budget. Happy to answer any questions, but at the end of the day, those are really policy questions for these boards to settle. I can cut the budget to any number. Whatever number you give me to work with. Mark's done it. I've done it. You've all done it previously.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Terenzini. Mrs. Spinney, and then to Mr. Haddad.
Thank you, Peter. 2 questions. First, just to confirm, the 60-40 split that you proposed between the school and the remainder of the municipal budget, that was just a proposed starting point, correct? That wasn't anything that you're trying to set in stone. That was just to begin these conversations, correct?
Well, what I did was, I looked at how much of the town budget the schools typically are, and I looked at how much, not education in general, because we have Blackstone Valley sitting out there as well. So I looked at what the school department itself had roughly averaged, and then what the town side had roughly averaged, inclusive of Blackstone Valley, and that ran roughly 60-40.
Okay, and then my second question was, can you explain where you're getting your override numbers and what the 863 that was already spent out of the override came from?
Sure.
It was a $4 million override with 800 that was designated for capital, and then.
Right. So you had a $4 million override with 2 components. The first component being that $800,000 for capital, and under statute, that's all you can ever use it for. You can't change and say, well, we need that on the operations side. Under the statute, if you don't put it into the capital reserve fund, it expires. It goes away over time. It's the only override that can have a very specific purpose and expire. That left you with $3.2 million for operations, and you appropriated at your annual town meeting $863,000 in change. So when I take the 3.2 million and I subtract the 863,000, that gives me the roughly 2.4 million, 2.34 5, I think, that I then take and spread out over the 4 remaining years. If you want to bring that in over the 3 remaining years, that takes you to bringing in 800,000, which produces roughly another 180,000 for the schools. And if you want to bring it in over only 2 years, and you don't have to do it in perfect math either. You've already seen that you took the 3.2 million and brought a major piece in during year 1. If you bring it in over 2 years, that's about 1.2 million. So, I mean, you can do the math back and forth, but that's basically the way it flows.
And I would argue that the schools shouldn't be limited to 60% of that, because when we went to the voters and asked for this override, we told them that 2.8 million of it was for the schools. And so I don't think it's just a strict 60-40 split on that. But can anyone tell me what the 860,000 was appropriated to at town meeting? Sorry, and then I'm done, I promise, for now.
And I'd
Peter,
like
if
to
I-
come back to Ms. Spinney's comments after Mark.
Peter,
addresses
if I
the
may
question.
answer Elizabeth's question, great portion of it went to the schools. And then another portion of it went to for the fire department. And then the rest of it restored some salaries on the municipal side. That was the majority of the override money of the 863,000.
Thank you, Mark.
Just to add, not to forget, there were some capital items too that were in separate warrant articles.
Oh, that's correct, for the
You know,
fire department, and police
Police
department.
and fire department as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Terenzini's report?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes.
I would just like to follow up on the 60-40. That could be whatever sharing formula you want, but I had to be able to give some guesstimate to the superintendent and his team, or they were preparing a budget in a vacuum. Similarly, I had to have some sense of how many dollars I thought would be available on the town side. This formula basically says that the town side of the house would have about 740,000. So now I simply back out the increase in Blackstone Valley health insurance and the like, and I start to get a sense of what I need to do to close that gap. But without some sense of monies that are being allocated to the two sides, we're basically building a budget without having any sense of at what point do we close the gap and have a balanced budget.
Thank you. Mr. Haddad?
And just to follow up on what I said earlier and follow up on Carter's presentation, when I put the Groton budget together this year, I cut state aid 5%. I'm not confident that the state's going to be able to level fund. Now, hopefully they will, but revenues still haven't rebounded, and they use a substantial portion of their rainy day fund to balance this year's budget when they finally finish the budget in the first week of December. So I think Carter is being conservative in his estimates, which I appreciate. I think taking a risk on level funding state aid, I hope he's right, but I'm expecting a little bit of a reduction in unrestricted local aid. They might hold Chapter 70 money whole, which they probably will, but I have a feeling unrestricted local aid is going to take a hit. So we might see a small reduction in that. So to follow up on what I was saying before, I support Carter's revenue estimates for next year, the 1.9. I think he's right on. How he splits that's a policy decision of the select board and the school committee. But from my perspective, I really think the selectmen need to consider using a little bit more of that override this year to help support the school budget. I think Carter's got the town budget covered. I think we need to really show support to the schools and have a little bit more money being spent out of the override for the schools. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Often.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Cummings, for putting together a a presentation on what the operational impacts would be based on the proposed budget numbers that we have today. I guess I don't really understand the same sense of what the operational impact of those numbers would be on the town side. So Carter, can you just articulate based on the requests and anticipated hiring needs and other things? Do you have a sense of what that operational impact would be based on those numbers today? I'd like to challenge that 60-40 a little bit and say if we were to swing that slightly in the direction to be able to cover some of those school needs, what would the impact be on the town side?
So let me give you, so $740,000, if all these other numbers hold. 740,000 on the town side of revenues. And let me give you a taste of the budgetary pressure. Health insurance, approximately $350,000. Pension, approximately $225,000. Trash, I'm going to assume, is resolved without any increase. Then there is the Blackstone Tech, and I shared with you all earlier the change in census population. Their COLA and collective bargaining, approximately $350,000. Library increase request, a little over $300,000. Police, we're taking the SRO back in, and we have some other issues there, approximately $150,000. And all I'm doing is giving you the big target, high value issues. So, I mean, I'm not, don't get me wrong. That's my job to close those gaps. That's what Mark and I get paid for. But I don't want you to think that there's a substantial amount of revenue that could be freed up for the schools simply by jigging the distribution. Changing it, 70-30, whatever you want to do, there's no room in the town side of the house to free up dollars simply by jigging that formula. At the end of the day, if you want to provide more monies for the schools, and I fully understand that, you truly need to move to probably something on the order of bringing, assuming all the other numbers hold up, you probably need to bring in close to $1 million of the override next year.
We're going to have Ms. Hoffman followed up by Mr. Jefferson and Ms. Roy.
Thank you, Peter. Just quickly, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that what we're really asking is about 286. I've heard the 586 a couple times. I don't know if people are misspeaking, but it's an extra 286 that'll really impact our operational budget next year.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Jefferson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure we could get in and nitpick just about everything, or second guess every line item, but it did seem like there was some allusion to trash rate increases. So is it fair to, set that budget line as even from the start, or are we putting ourselves behind the 8 ball already?
Peter, if I might.
Sure.
First, in order to Ms. Often's point, in order to get the schools an extra $300,000 on a base of 60-40, you need to increase the override by about 500,000. So it goes from 575 being brought in to something on the order of $1 million. With respect to the trash, that's a decision the select board will have yet to make. I have to make certain assumptions in preparing the budget. And for the moment, I have made an assumption that the the board will work to flatline that increase because if we don't, that is a roughly $175,000 expense that gets added to that other list of items that I enumerated.
Thank you. Ms. Roy, then Mr. Haddad.
So I just wanted to throw out a couple numbers just to see what everybody thought. What if instead of doing the 587.5 to ensure we have 5 years, we did 875 of the override? That keeps the 60-40 split, which the schools and the municipal side have kind of built preliminary budgets around, but it also gives the schools the additional 286 that they're looking for. That's going to leave about 491 for the next 3 years of override money, or 737 for 2 years, and it becomes a 4-year override, which is probably more likely that it becomes a 4-year override, but it's still, 737 for the following year. That's pretty close to that million. And we fingers crossed that cannabis is going to be coming online by the time we start talking about FY23 or FY24.
Mr. Haddad, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
following along the lines of what Laura asked, what Colleen just said, I'm a little confused at what Carter just said. Forget about 60-40 split, forget about all that. Carter has taken care of the town side on those things that he talked about, and he set aside 1 point whatever that Jay had up on his slide for the schools, leaving a $286,000 problem. I don't understand why we would need $500,000 more of the override to bridge the gap of a $286,000 shortfall. If you leave the town where it is, with where Carter's setting aside his money, you give the schools to what Carter had did on the 60-40 split. Isn't that $286,000? I don't understand why it's $500,000. Forget the 60-40. You've set aside money. You've taken care of the town side. The schools have a need of $1.4 million. $286,000 more dollars will give them that. And that's what we need to take out of the override. Forget 60-40. That's a nice way to start. You've dealt with the town side problems. The schools have a $286,000 problem there. That's what I've been saying from the beginning of this meeting. Let's figure out how to bridge that gap on the school side.
If one sets aside the split, Mark and Colleen are correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Terenzini? Mr. Rathi?
Arthur, I had a question about this personal property and real estate money we are getting. Why is it less in the coming years and more in 2020? It's almost like $3 million.
Yeah, so you, in your prior budgets, carried revenue estimates that were not actually available to the general fund budget. You carried in your estimates as a starter $1.5 million, which were never available to the general fund because they went to the road stabilization fund. So it looked like they were available to the general fund, but in fact they weren't. There were some other things in there as well. And when you compare apples to apples, you have $42,111,000 you can raise this year, and it goes up to 2.5%. Happy to walk you through all the weeds offline, but that's really it in simplest terms.
Okay.
If I might, there's one other change in the numbers that you'll see. You used to include your sewer revenues in your general fund budget, but it wasn't available to the general fund because it was dedicated to the enterprise fund. So Mark and I had talked early on about moving that to an enterprise fund budget. We think it's more transparent, but it does create some confusion in the initial years as you transition from one way of presenting it to another. And Mark, I don't know if he wants to speak to that at all, but I think everyone was online. The accounting, I know Anita was here earlier. You also had some double counting in you raised. What you did was you had some debt in the sewer department. So the town would pay the debt out of the general fund and then send a bill to the sewer department, which would then cut a check to the general fund, which you then took in as what looked like general fund revenue, when in fact it really was dedicated to that sewer department debt.
Is that what that $2 million is, Carter?
It's a couple of different things, Mark.
Okay.
And I met early on with the treasurer and with Ms. Patel, and I think we were all agreed that to the extent we could have that enterprise fund in place and pay its expenses directly out of the fund, as opposed to this washing it back and forth, it would resolve, make the accounting easier and make the books a little bit more transparent.
Shinoy, before we get to you, Ms. Patel, did you want to follow up with that?
I do. So Carter, the $2 million, does that include the sewer indirect plus the sewer debt? Because the sewer indirect is only around 235.
Yeah, no, it was primarily the debt, Anita.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Mr. Shinoy?
Yes, my question is, I'm fully in support of the 286,000 if we have to find that by bringing it in this year from the override money. My question is, what is going to be the impact next year? So we hire 5 positions. What does that mean for next year?
I wish I had a good answer for you. A lot of it's going to obviously be determined by how COVID rolls out, how this eventually, when we go back to some sort of normalcy. Then once we do that, once we assess what has been learned and what hasn't been learned, that's going to largely dictate what that plan is going forward. I don't think we're just going to return to school and just bounce back quickly, but beyond that, I can't tell you at this point if I think that's going to be, a year of supports, 2 years. At this point, unfortunately, I just don't know.
Ms. Soflin?
Jay, can I just piggyback off what you said and correct me if I'm wrong? Those positions though were built into the override budget to begin with, so they should have been planned out for the next few years, correct?
Yep, no, that is absolutely correct. And those, but going back to June, those 3 positions are built into the budget and then carried over every year going forward. I must have misunderstood. I thought you were talking about any other positions that we add in terms of.
Yeah, I'm only talking about the 5 positions. Sorry. The 5, if we get the 286,000 for the school,
we would maintain those.
You will get that 5 positions, which was 3 positions that we eliminated before, and 2 plus 2 additional, correct?
Correct.
And then the override budget had accounted for these 5 going forward.
That's correct. Yep. Sorry, I misunderstood. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Smith?
A couple of questions. The 1.5 million for the roads, is that the legacy from the prior override? That was a permanent 1.5 million every year that we're going to put into the roads? Yes. Okay.
That's correct. Yes, Mr. Smith.
Second question is on the health insurance, $350,000. Is that an increase of $350,000?
That is our best hope. We met with the insurance consultants this morning. The trend rate itself for our carriers is running in the 0 to 5%, depending upon their contract with various employee groups. However, the insurers are generally bulking up those by something on the order of around 2.5% to 7.5% for what they call a COVID smoothing effect. That is to say, they're taking all their normal trend rates and then they're saying, we don't really know what's going to happen because of all the COVID impacts. So we're going to add something that we think will help us smooth out the rates when we start to actually get all these bills. So I spoke with our consultant about the best that I thought we could absorb within the budget, and that is the number that we used. Could it be higher? Yes. Could it be lower? Probably not.
So
Right.
I'm
One
doing
second,
some
Mr.
simple
Smith,
mathematics.
Barry, 1 minute, please. Did anyone else have another question or hand up if I missed it before I go back to Mr. Smith? Thank you. Go ahead.
On the health insurance, that's an increase of 350,000?
Yes.
Okay. I did some quick math. We have about 500 employees in town. And if I divide that into 350,000, that's a $700 increase per employee. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong at all. We have, because remember, we have retirees as well.
Ah, I know those people. Yeah, they're all healthy.
And we have a variety of insurances, dental and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So these are really our best numbers. The one of the rating groups is actually meeting tomorrow, both in terms of our liability insurance and one of our rates. So we may actually know something by mid next week. But at this point, we have to use sort of the best intelligence that we're able to develop by talking with our peers, seeing a few rates that have been released, and then making our best guesstimates, and in some cases our best hope estimates. You know.
Okay, last question is it's the same one that comes up every year. Is Blackstone Valley lining up to take a haircut, or are they going with everything that they think they should get?
Hard for me to say. I've not been able, excuse me, to connect with your representative, but let me say that even if their budget remains completely flat, you have had a change in your student census, yes, and you could see the assessment increase on the simple basis of that formula change that results when your census goes up.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Smith, just to let you know that the Blackstone Valley Budget Subcommittee is meeting tonight. It is posted on the town's calendar as well. So I'm sure they'll have some more information in the coming weeks. Does anyone else have any other questions? Other than that, I want to turn it over to the board, select board. Hearing all the input tonight, I just wanted to make sure I've given everyone an opportunity to speak and talk about what I'm hearing about the request tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Haddad. And Ms. Roy, and some of you who may be joining with that, is consider a fiscal policy for FY22 that would consider using additional override monies to offset the budget, in addition to then planning out for the subsequent years going forward. Is that pretty accurate about what we're all hearing tonight? And if so, wanted to give the last few minutes here a discussion about the board. Our next meeting would be the February 2nd if we needed to come back and take an action on this, but I wanted to open up to the board now. Mr. Prisby.
I'm actually less alarmed than I thought I would be, if I'm being totally honest. I thought this was going to be a much harder discussion. I appreciate Carter's approach with being conservative, in particular about new growth. Candidly, if we were having this discussion a year ago, that new growth number would have been $1 million, and we would be told we wouldn't have anything to worry about. So I'm glad we're having the discussion now that we are. I tend to agree with Mark, but there are a few variables that I want to see play out a little bit. I want to see the state aid play out a little bit. I want to see what happens when that number comes back on January 27th. You know, in Carter, I understand where you're coming from about not a lot of room in the budget. Totally get it. I'd like to see the budget and then, you know, continue this discussion as we're moving along. Push comes to shove, I think we'll end up finding that extra money from the levy capacity, because it's not a heck of a lot. I don't think it's going to alter our approach or our commitment to the town and to preserve the override for as long as we can, given COVID. And I'm hopeful that in the years to come, when we have the new full-time town administrator on, when we've got the new finance director on, when the marijuana shops are actually open, and we are aggressively pursuing that, and state aid comes back, we can make up for a little bit of lost ground here and try and fulfill that commitment to the community for the duration of that levy capacity. So thank you everybody for your work. Thank you, Jay, for being candid. Thank you, Carter, for being candid. And thank everybody for their patience and their understanding while we work through what is at best a really difficult situation for everybody involved. But I think we'll end up working this out in a positive way.
Any other board members have any questions, comments? So I wanted to say too that, I would be in favor of looking at utilizing additional override monies. But I think it's also important to consider as state revenues and everything starts finalizing out that, if this board considers that move in the next couple of weeks and puts that policy together, that there should be an understanding that if revenues do come in higher than expected than what's being projected here, that this board may want to reconsider using additional levy capacity, right, to help offset those other years. I think that's important to say here tonight. I think this is one of the first times I probably will ever hear a select board in recent memory that would even consider using additional monies. They were always pretty steadfast, but I think, I know I speak for myself here, but I understand that these are some interesting trying times. So I would like to stay extremely open to this and have my board obviously talk a little bit more about this on February 2nd. If there isn't any other questions, I just wanted to make sure if that was agreeable to everybody else, or if there's any questions before we adjourn to this meeting, and then we reconvene on our February 2nd meeting. Wow. Okay. I did not think this would get done under an hour. I had the over, so I just lost a bet. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. If there isn't any other business in front of us tonight or any of the questions or comments, we appreciate everyone's patience in meeting here tonight like this. I know we'd rather do this all in person, and I can entertain a motion to adjourn from the groups. And I know there's a couple committees that are going to continue meeting after we're done. So I can entertain a motion from the select board to adjourn.
You're adjourned.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. By roll call, please. Mr. Prisby.
Prisby, aye.
Mr. Often.
Often aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. I declare the select board adjourned. Thank you very much. Ms. Often.
Thank you, Peter. I'll take a motion to adjourn from the school committee.
So moved.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, this will be a roll call vote. Elizabeth Spinney,
Aye.
Jennifer Conley,
Jennifer Connolly, aye.
Rahul Rati.
All righty, aye.
Looks like Amy had to go. Laura Often, aye. And I declare our meeting closed. Thank you, everybody. And FinCom is still staying on. So good night, everybody. Thanks for your time. And we'll be in touch. Let's keep the communication open, please.
Thanks, Laura.
Appreciate it all. Nice to see you.
Okay, so Finance Committee, I am going to have to beg off for the rest of the night. Something just came up that I need to take care of. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Irene to handle, and then I'll follow up with Sue if you need me for anything else. I'm sorry, I just have to go. So thank you, Finance Committee.
Okay, so Sue, help me out.
I have to get to another meeting, so I'm going to have to bug out too. But I just wanted to say, I just wanted to say before I go that I agree with Mark and the select board. We should still give it some consideration, but I'd like to support the 286,000 out of the override if we can. I'm being hopeful that the new growth will come in higher. So that way, that's kind of what I'm basing it on. I'm not saying for sure, but I'm hopeful that it probably will. It has always in the past. So I'm just kind of basing it on that. but I have to leave. I have to get to a DPW meeting that's important. So just wanted to get that in before I left.
Okay, Sue, before you leave,
Yep.
the last item on the agenda is scheduling some meetings.
Yep.
Do you have days and times you know you're not available that you want to let us know about right now?
I will work around the schedule of finance committee. They've always come first.
Okay,
So don't worry about it.
okay,
Whatever committees, if people want me to take the committees back that I met with last year, that's fine. I could do that too.
okay.
Okay. All right. Night.
Yep, good night. Okay. So I want to make sure that everyone else is going to be able to remain so that I have a quorum. Because at this point I've got Andy, Eric, Dan, myself, Barry, Gopal. Okay, so there's 6 of us. Okay, so we should be good. Okay. Okay, so according to our agenda, having adjourned from the Tri-Committee meeting, we're going to look at the town report. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? Sue Fiacco, tell me when that's due.
It is due the very 1st of February.
Okay,
So I was, it was a hope that it would be able to be reviewed tonight and approved if possible.
okay,
That's the best scenario.
yeah, okay. So the only real question I had was on the numbers for, usually you say, here's what happened in 20 and, just so you know, here's what we're anticipating, how 21 will end. So that's the part that's in purple.
So there's that comment, Irene, and then
Yep.
there's the large paragraph
Right.
with what you're speaking to.
Yeah, and again, that one, I think we're still very dicey on that. I for one would be in favor of just deleting the entire paragraph.
I was actually going to suggest that to you. I'm not sure because it's a calendar year that we're talking about of 2020. I know that it's a blind spot on both sides because we are talking about FY21 as well as calendar year 20. But the revenue, I'm not sure if it's pertinent at this time.
Yeah.
But that's a board decision.
I'd be just as happy to delete it.
Irene, did we lose you?
Nope, I'm here. I said I would be just as happy to delete it.
Okay.
And I was waiting kind of to see if anybody else was going to chime in.
Yes, and the little tiny purple one with did we actually, is that confirmed? I haven't done my research. FY21, we taxed to the full levy limit.
To the best of my knowledge, yes. Carter, do you know the answer to that?
You did not tax to the full levy limit.
Okay.
And the reason is that you voted the override on the operations side at 3.2 million.
Yeah.
But you only used that $860,000.
Yeah.
So you're actually about 2.35 in simplest terms below your levy limit.
Okay, so we would, if I wanted to include the statement at all, I would say that we taxed to approximately 97%.
Whatever that math would work out to, yes.
Yeah.
And that's that override that remains, that is reserve and
Right.
unused levy capacity at this point.
Okay. Am I hearing any strong feelings from anybody as to whether we change that to say we are, we taxed at 97% of our full levy limit, or just deleting that sentence in its entirety?
If I may,
Yep, Barry?
I like leaving the sentence in because for the finance wonks, that satisfies them. I
Okay.
also like leaving the other purple paragraph in there. Once again, the accounting and finance wonks like to see these numbers.
Okay, but I can't put them in unless I get better numbers.
Okay.
So for example, the first sentence is okay through our annual growth and expenditures has averaged. Okay, period, 3.77% over the past 6 years. And then I could put, we do know that our BVT enrollment has jumped and thus our school expenses will rise, and they were already okay. I actually don't like most of the paragraph.
Okay. Kill it.
Yeah.
Actually, I prefer charts and graphs, but what the heck?
Unfortunately, I don't think we're allowed to put charts and graphs in.
We are not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. No, this, unfortunately, we are limited to prose.
Okay.
Can I ask why?
Because Barry, I'm with you. I prefer those two.
Do we know why that rule is?
It's a cost, the town report is A, very costly, and B, if everybody put charts in there, it's, it's a book that is created in-house, and it's a monumental task, to be very honest with you, and it's one person who puts it together. And basically, it's literally limited to even the font and the size and the no indentations type of thing. That's the reason why it's cost effective, and it's it can be mind boggling for someone who isn't normally a publisher of books.
Makes sense.
Okay, so Sue, let's change the wording on that on the one sentence, to taxed at 97%. And then let's just delete this paragraph for this year. We can always go ahead and put a similar paragraph in future years. It's not like it's being deleted forever and ever.
Yes.
I just think for this year, there's too many unknowns. And yeah, I wasn't crazy about it to begin with, just because of the wording and a number of other things.
Yeah, take it out.
So I will, so yes, I will change that one sentence, delete that full paragraph. And then I can send it to you, Irene, just for a final review.
Yeah.
And then as a policy, going forward as Madam Vice Chair, if you want to entertain a motion with those amendments.
Right, I was just going to ask that. So normally the Finance Committee takes a vote on accepting this.
That's correct.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to accept the town report as presented with the 2 amendments discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, then by roll call vote. So give me a minute while I get a list of everyone I've got, because I don't have that good of a memory. So Barry Smith.
Irene, I'm sorry to interject.
Is there any discussion? I'm sorry, I have to back up for a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can you please repeat the motion again? Sorry.
Okay, the motion is to accept the town report as presented with the 2 changes, okay, as discussed, to the statement about the levy limit taxing and the deletion of the paragraph about revenue growth.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, let's go for a vote. Barry Smith.
Aye.
Okay, Dan Kusher,
Aye.
Eric Swenson,
Swenson, aye.
Andy Jefferson,
Jefferson, I.
Gopal Shenoy,
Aye.
Irene Hool, aye. I declare the motion passed. Okay, the next order of business is for the minutes as presented from November 19th, 2020. Does anybody, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the November 19th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the incredibly terrific meeting minutes from the November meeting
Okay,
as edited.
motion's been made. Gopal, I think you said you seconded it, and motion's been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Susan?
Yes, please. I want to thank Barry for all of his input. He is very thorough.
Okay, that explains a lot. Okay, there being no more discussion, we will move to a vote. This will be done by roll call. Barry Smith,
Aye.
Gopal Shenoy,
Aye.
Andy Jefferson,
Jefferson, I.
Eric Swenson,
Abstain.
okay, Dan Kusher,
Aye.
and Irene Hool, aye. I declare the motion carried. Okay, next order of business, we have a couple of bills. Okay, primarily for internet reimbursement for the months of September 2020, October 2020, November 2020, December 2020, and January 2021. And I think these are in an Excel spreadsheet. Nope, maybe not. I know I opened them. They're in a Word document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to see,
So-
it's the cover sheet. Would you like to see it?
Right. Yep, I've got it.
Okay.
It's $20 per month for a total of 105. Is there anybody else who needs to see this? Do we need to share the screen and show the bills? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the payment of $105 to cover the internet use to Spectrum from September 2020 through January 2021.
So moved.
Motion made. Dan Kusher seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we will do a roll call vote on the motion. Barry Smith,
Aye.
Dan Kusher,
Aye.
Eric Swenson,
Swenson, aye.
Andy Jefferson,
Jefferson, I.
okay, Gopal Shenoy.
Aye.
Okay, and I got everybody, I believe. Irene Hool, aye. I declare the motion carried. Okay, and I just have to go back to my agenda, which is somewhere else, obviously.
The department
go.
assignments.
But I had it here a second ago.
It is to schedule meeting
Brief,
date.
here we go. Ah, come back. The meeting dates, thank you.
Yeah, Irene, if.
Okay, so Sue,
Irene?
on this one. Yep, go ahead, Barry.
Last year, there was an attempt at actually writing a series of questions and taking notes and then bringing them back to the committee. I'm not sure everybody did that. Do we want to do that, or how do we want to report back our findings after we've talked to each of these department heads? Was it
Don't
pretty
mind me,
thorough?
I'm thinking.
Sue Robbins put together the list of things that we were looking.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful set of questions. Yeah.
But I don't think we reviewed what people came up with.
Oh, well, part of the problem was COVID happened.
Yeah.
Right about the time when we normally would have been doing this. So all of a sudden, it was very difficult to meet with people. And we hadn't yet gotten quite as completely immersed in doing everything by Zoom as we now are. Plus, even when we were meeting with people, everybody was like, I don't know. We're waiting to see. We have no idea, you know, what's going on. So that was part of it. It was just such a, you know, very tumultuous, uncertain time. So Barry, are you thinking of something like a table or a spreadsheet where we would have all of the questions and then list the departments and kind of put their responses to it?
That's what I ended up doing.
Okay.
But I don't think we ever really reviewed any of the, I think somebody else also did something along those lines.
Yeah. Susan?
So talking about exactly that, last year turned into a budget review nightmare. It technically didn't exist, or whatever you folks, finance committee members, had the opportunity to do. It never was solely vetted as a finance committee.
Okay.
And we never met with our Saturday meetings, etc. So with that in mind, putting this together today, you know, the direction is really what we need, especially since we're likely going to stay on the Zoom format to review the budget. So my question to you folks is, how would you like to do it this year? Would you like to meet with one department or two departments one night a week or a couple of nights a week? And because the Saturday 4 to 6 hour idea on Zoom isn't a great idea as far as everyone staying on and working it that way. I think by phone or your own individual Zooming for to review your particular department is probably going to work. But then the point is, how do we come back to the finance committee table in a time frame?
Yeah.
And then
So if I've got it right, what we used to do is one or two of us would go in and talk to a department head. We would have the information that the town administrator had already put together. For example, I'd go in to talk to Bob Berger, and I would have, this is how much we anticipate spending for the gas inspector, for the electrical inspector, blah, blah, blah. And he would give me feedback on that. And he would give me alternatives. He would say, these are our issues, blah, blah, blah. I would meet with them. I would put that information together. Then we would go back to the finance committee, which each department's comments, and review that, and then go into the Saturday meetings, you know, donuts, coffee, and 4 hours of whatever. Do we want to do that 3-step process, or do we want to somehow change how we're doing that?
I think COVID is making that last step difficult.
Yes.
And to meet with the budget department, I would think that it would be easier to meet with 1 or 2 a night, or cover Bob Berger with his numerous inspections, inspectors, et cetera, in one evening. I've been kind of trying to figure it out in my head, what would be best for all of you with your busy schedules. But I think that, well, I can put it out to you folks and as to how you would like to address that. I will say, excuse me for, that was kind of backwards. Most importantly, to start the process, we are directed to have a presentation by our temporary town administrator by a certain date to present the FY22 budget. And technically, I had spoken to Peter, the chair of the select board, ahead of the meeting to see if he was interested in a group meeting as we had done in the past. It would be a public hearing for Finance Committee and a public meeting for Select Board. He was open to that, if you folks are, and the suggested date is February 10th at 6 o'clock, or excuse me, 7 o'clock, excuse me. And that is if Carter can make it and everyone else can make it, and put the date out there. And now I'll just zip it for a minute.
Okay, so you said it would be a public hearing for FinCom, a public meeting for the Select Board.
Correct.
And Carter would be presenting to us.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if I've got it right, either way, we, in the past, before we talk to the department heads, we go into the meeting with them with what they have asked for in their budget and what the town administrator has said, this is what you can get.
Correct.
And that's for salaries and expenses for equipment and software licenses and things like that. So we go in with that knowledge and we ask them questions such as, is this enough? Are there revenue generating opportunities you might have? Are there cost cuttings that you can do? Do you need more people? Do you need fewer people? We ask them things like that. Then we come into, and for the most part, exactly what the town administrator has said, that's what they're going to get. But at least we get a better idea before we come back to the whole finance committee and any public hearings, if I've got it right. That's what I recall.
Yeah.
Irene?
Yes, go ahead, Gopal.
I have a lot of basic questions because this is my first time participating in this. So, and then I'm also trying to think about meetings I've participated in and how effective has it been if the person who is asking for the money comes and presents in front of the committee. So for example, the school committee presented what they are short with, why are they short? There's a ton of questions that come up. And when we were doing the budget and trying to figure out if the police department needed 1 cruiser, 2 cruisers, when the police chief came and explained his situation to all of us, it became a lot easier to make decisions, ask questions about different options and so on. So my recommendation would be, if we think that we have a set of questions that we want all the departments to think about before they come and present, meaning, is this money enough? Do you have revenue generation opportunities, whatever? Let's send those questions to them so that when they come to make the presentation to the finance committee, they come prepared. Carter could look at the questions that we want to send to them, and such that Carter can also add whatever he would like to hear, such that when they come to present, it's much easier to come to a consensus, and a lot of the questions have already been answered. That, in my perspective, and I'm being selfish here as well, will give me exposure to the different departments rather than me just going and participating in one discussion with some specific department that I've been assigned to. That would be my recommendation.
Susan, go ahead.
So Gopal, that it's actually a double whammy for finance committee. So individual finance committee members are asked to take the time to visit with certain departments. But then in addition to that, after, the department head is also invited to the finance committee public meeting as a group to discuss everything basically all over again. What that does is when you have an individual that's meeting one-on-one per department, it may be a more candid meeting, a little bit more open meeting without being on a public venue. So that, for example, Gopal, if you visited the town clerk's office and you would be an advocate for her, if you will, about certain items that she may be hesitant to talk about, you know, in a public venue, or be able to explain the reasons why, as a finance committee member, why that would be a good idea to support her or not support. So you would be exposed to all departments.
Yeah, so you get 1 or 2 departments, or 3 or 4 or 5 that you get to know at a very intimate level. But then you do also, get to hear from, assuming you're able to make all the meetings, you get to hear from every single department. You just don't get the one-on-one. Just to give you an example, and you also have the option, and this is what I did my first year. I'm not sure if I did any department all by myself. I think I was the second person on virtually all of the ones I did.
Yeah.
That's how I learned to do it, so that my second year, okay, now I could go out, and do some of these on my own.
It makes sense to me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Only thing I would suggest is even for that one-on-one. So for example, if I'm a department head,
Yeah.
I would prefer to get those questions so that I can think about it, so that that one-on-one meeting that I'm having with you or Irene or Barry or Andy would be a lot more productive, so that I can come prepared if you send me a set of questions. Otherwise, what could happen is that could take 2 iterations, because
Yeah.
I sprung a new question on you, or you sprung a new question on me. I need to go and find some data. I need to talk to some people, so on and so forth. So
Yeah. Does anyone know, have we done that in the past, given them the questions ahead of time?
We have not.
Okay.
there's nothing that prevents us from doing it, right? Because
Oh, yeah, no, it's all public.
yeah.
So it's not, there's no secrets there.
Trying to find my questions from last year and I can't find them.
Carter, I'm sorry that I spoke when
Yeah.
your hand was up next. I apologize.
No, you're fine. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, Carter still has his hand up.
Yes.
Who does?
Carter.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carter. The problem is I have to set this up differently. I don't see you on my screen. I apologize. Hold on while I get the gallery view. Now I can see everybody. Carter, go ahead.
Well, it's the first time I think I've been accused of being a hiding violet. I wanted to circle back to something that was said earlier, which was that Carter has the town side. I want to be clear. With $750,000 of revenues, it is highly likely that health insurance, the retirement fund increase, and Blackstone by itself could consume those dollars. I will then have to scrape deep to try to find some monies for merit increases, COLAs, and collective bargaining. And that's probably about the end of the line. You have a new library that you are going to want to open, for which a request is in the, let me just say, $300,000 plus or minus range. You have a number of other department requests that you simply are not going to be able to accommodate. And so I anticipate that when I release that budget February 8, February 9, I will have once again succeeded in making absolutely nobody happy. So I don't want to mislead you that somehow everything is fine and that we have it covered. In terms of, I have a revenue number, I cut the budget to the revenue number. Yeah, we'll make it happen. But I don't want to mislead you in any fashion that it's going to be easy or pretty. And it certainly will not be the several hundred-page document that Tim and Becca were able to prepare. We've been lean on staff, and as you know, here in Town Hall, we've had quite a few hits. I've just kind of crawled out of the grave after 2 weeks of house arrest myself. Thank you, COVID. But that's kind of, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. Thank you, Irene.
Irene, you're on.
Okay, not sure how that happened. I said, Carter, I did not realize you'd been ill. I'm glad you are better.
Thank you.
Carter, I just had a follow-up question on what you just said, because I wrote down the numbers that you had mentioned in the meeting. So increase of 350,000 in health insurance, $225,000 in pension. I didn't write down the number for BBIT, 350,000 for collective bargaining, 300,000 for the library, 150,000 for police. So if I add up all those numbers, that's 1.325 million.
Yeah, I'll probably be something on the order of $700,000 short.
Yeah,
give or
that's
take,
what
assuming we can deal with the trash issue, which is $175,000 number by itself.
What is the trash issue? Many people mentioned it. I don't know what that is.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, go right ahead.
So you had a 3-year contract with EL Harvey, I'm sorry, fixed pricing. That includes the collection of all of the MSW, municipal solid waste, its transport to Wheelabrator, and then the collection of all of the recyclables, what we speak to as commodities. And that contract was written at a time when the commodity markets were relatively strong. And if Harvey didn't make any money off the commodities, they at least didn't end up spending a lot on the commodities. So if it cost them $80 a ton to process everything, they were over the range of the commodities, getting revenues of $80 a ton. I'm just using some basic numbers here. Well, what happened is that early on in that contract, the world kind of went upside down in terms of the commodities market. China created a standard that was difficult for many to meet at best, and decided it no longer wanted to be the world's dumping ground for recycling products. And so commodities have gone from at best a break-even proposition for Harvey to a cost factor for Harvey. And that ranges month by month. And if you want, I can send the committee the work that we've done on this over the past 2 months. In fact, Irene, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll send off to Sue the very boring analysis that we've been through so the committee will understand. But right now, commodities are costing about $80 a ton to process and dispose of, with no prospect that that's going to turn around in the very near term. So in simplistic terms, Harvey wants to go up about 2.5%. They wanted more, but we negotiated with them in terms of the base contract. That's pretty manageable, about a $17,500 give or take tick in that number. But the 1,500 tons, 1,600 tons of commodities that you produce each year at $80 a ton, let's say, becomes $150,000+ cost impact that we have to deal with in some fashion. I don't want to belabor how we get there, but as I'll send you the reports off over the next day or two.
Okay. So basically what you're saying, Carter, is you're 700,000 short plus another 128,000 in this trash. So essentially saying that you have the town side all figured out is not accurate.
Well, I have the town side figured out. You give me the number, I cut the budget. It's, yeah, I got it covered. I just didn't want you to think we had it covered in terms of all of our needs were funded. And then I deliver a budget that looks different and somebody says, hey, wait a minute, we thought you had it covered. I just didn't want you to misunderstand or be misled in any fashion, Gopal.
Thank you, Carter.
And I want to be, if I might, just, these are rough ballpark numbers. We're still working through everything. So please, don't take it to the bank.
Okay, Susan.
Irene, through you, Carter, will you be prepared for February 10th to present the proposed budget?
Your charter leaves me no choice. I always hit the deadlines. You may not like the depth and breadth. It will not be the depth and breadth of the budgets that I've done in the past, but we'll certainly hit our highlights sufficient to give you a broad overview of what it looks like. I mean, frankly, it's going to look very much in a number of departments. It's going to look very much like this year.
Will it be in the form of a download or file download for us, or will
Yes.
it? Okay. Would it be in a adjustable, meaning that it's a Excel document that we can work with as adjustments are made?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Does 210 work for everyone?
Yeah, does that say that we would conduct our department meeting interviews after February 10th?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
If we can,
I found my questions, finally.
Okay, if we can start with the 210 date, then we can decide how we want to proceed following that through March.
Works for me.
Okay.
Representative McGovern is calling me again. Thank you, sir.
Susan, what time is the start? How long will it be?
7 o'clock. Is that all right with everyone? Does that work best for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so the joint meeting with the select board is acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, so I would assume that they will start at 7. Carter, you're okay with 7?
I'm here to meet your needs, so yeah.
Okay,
My presentation, and this will not be the normal depth and breadth that I give, but normally on the order of 25 minutes.
so we should be done, Gopal, within an hour's time frame. Probably 7 to 8, unless there's something more on the agenda that maybe we want to talk about how a little bit more in depth as far as the process of working with the department heads.
Susan, that's perfectly fine. I had no plans to go anywhere.
Okay. Okay, this is good. Okay, so we've got that down. So
Yeah.
how do we feel about, do you feel that a Saturday meeting is going to work with you folks? Or do you feel that you would like the approach of working with department heads as a finance committee after you meet with them sometime in March, a few days a week, a few nights a week? What is your pleasure? What are your thoughts?
Dan?
I don't really have a preference. Either of those seems fine with me.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying, Sue. So normally following the February 10th meeting, we would go off, have our individual, get-togethers with the department heads, right?
Correct.
And then we would start getting together for our public hearings.
No, public meetings with department heads.
Okay.
So for example, I don't know if you had all, I had given you last year's schedule, which never really happened. Just so that, let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, it did.
Sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I just got paged, so I need to drop off for some issue at work. So let me know if February 10th works. Whatever you guys agree with, I'll go along with it.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yep,
Thanks.
no, we'll keep you in the loop.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I'm sorry, bear with me here. Are you seeing anything?
No.
Me neither. Okay, let me just find it.
Now, is this the one that you sent with the email or is it something else?
No, it is what I sent with the email.
Okay. If you can't get it to share, I can, because I've got it open.
Oh, that would be great, because mine is
Okay.
looking.
Only thing is, can I share screen?
Yes, you can.
Yes, okay. So I just hit, oh no, it says I'm sharing your screen.
Oh, wait a minute.
Again? Okay, yeah, you have to get out of screen share.
Yeah.
Okay, now we should be able to do this. Okay.
Thank you.
So I want the Excel sheet and I think I want this one. Okay, and share. Okay, you guys seeing that or no?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
It's on my other screen, so I'm not sure if you're all seeing it. Okay, so this is what Susan was trying to share with us. And this shows.
You have old and new in here. What I did is I started to update, I put Carter's name in there and et cetera. But the FY20 membership, for example, Barry was assigned to the inspectors.
Yeah.
For example, so some is current information and some is not, but primarily that was to see who would like to do what, and so that everyone could be aware of what who they visited with last year or who they were on schedule to visit with last year. It's hard to believe that last year at this time we didn't think this was going to happen.
Oh, I know.
Have the year that we had. So basically, you can see that there's a few team up situations there, similar to what Irene had said, whether it was schedule or a learning curve. Dan worked with Sue Robbins. Colleen worked with Mark because they were, Dan, that wasn't your first time though, right? That was your second year? Was that last year, your second year?
Yeah, that was my second year. I think everybody was, I don't think we had any new people last year. And so everybody just kind of kept their assignments, and that meant I kept my doubled assignments. So I could definitely pick up some of Matt's or Colleen's stuff this time around.
Yeah, there's value in having two people go in,
Oh, yeah, especially for some of the bigger departments.
even if you're
This
not.
year, you likely might not be going in. You could be Zooming.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you
I think
could
that's
be-
what he means by going in.
Okay. Okay.
Meeting with.
Meeting with. So Dan, did I hear you correctly? Are you interested? Did you commit yourself to what you worked on last year?
Sorry, was that?
Did you say that you would, did I understand you to say that you would like to work with Sue as you did last year, or were you saying something else?
I was saying I could pick up some of what Matt was doing. I think Colleen was also still doubled up last year.
Yeah.
I think it's just Matt's that have nobody covering them. So yeah, I think it was it's below where you are now, but I think it was CPC, veterans, and Board of Health, I think were the three he had alone. Board of Health might be a good one to have more than one person go this year, considering their increased role during the pandemic.
Yep. So so you're looking to do CIPC, you're looking to do Board of Health, you're looking to do Veteran Services. Correct? So those.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, I got 4 down here. Veteran
If anybody
Services.
else feels strongly about any of those, I'm,
Board of Health has 2 slots because there's 2 people that are contacts.
Yep, and the other one was Fire.
And that's much.
I think I went along for the fire one last year as well.
Okay. So I have Dan down for 4.
Okay, so where's fire?
You want to go
Oh,
through?
here it is.
I don't want to be dominating this discussion.
No, that's fine with me because.
Treasurer, I'm more than willing to join Mark in that one.
Okay, so hold on just for a second. I need to put Dan in here. Okay. And so, Barry, which was the one you wanted to volunteer for?
Treasurer collector, Amy Perkins,
so
Mark
that's-
is
okay, here
there.
we go. Yep, hold on.
Me in there also.
Yep. Okay.
And if you roll up, I think there's a couple of others I'll stick with.
Yep, you are up here for quite a few. All with
Well,
Bob Burger.
Still Bob Burger,
Right.
the power center.
In very
So the
many
finance
ways,
director,
yes.
town accountant, I think we have this twice. You can take Colleen's name off and put my name on.
Oops, okay, hold on. Yep.
And recreation I'll keep. Jen
Okay.
is always cool.
Okay.
You need somebody other than Colleen in there for Carter.
Yeah. I think I'll join Mark for that one.
Yeah, those are good.
Okay.
The number of them here, you really don't need somebody to go to.
Yeah, well, like town moderator, I'm just gonna put NA as in not applicable.
Well, that is usually all covered well, in the past, I'll reword here. All of that was reviewed with the town administrator.
Okay.
So all the ones that are kind of, looks like it's blank on the far right side.
Yep.
Is basically all town administrator, who
Okay.
basically he oversees.
So what I would do is I'm gonna do this. It would be all of these.
Yeah. I used to talk to the animal control and animal inspector guys. But that kind of went away. That's all set.
Yeah, because now we consolidate that.
That's
Yeah.
a regional.
So I've just highlighted that, Sue, to make it obvious that it's all one block.
Yes. Yes, so, Barry, well, first of all, we have some other new folks here that I'm sure would like to participate. So, for example, town clerk is on here, and election and registration, which technically go hand in hand when you're meeting with the town clerk.
Yes.
So, would someone like to work that with maybe Barry and a new member, for example, or Irene and a new member, or a new member in a.
Which one, town clerk?
We have town clerk and election and registration that would go hand in hand.
Yeah, Mark had been handling that, but yeah, that's a good one to go into. Another good one to double up is police.
Correct.
I'd take those on.
Who's that? Who just said that? Eric?
Andy.
Andy.
As a secondary.
Okay, so
Obviously not.
Andy, I'm gonna put you with Sue for the police.
Yeah, you get to meet in the police station. Oh, boy.
Well, this, you might.
No, I don't think so. Not this year.
Yeah, you keep forgetting that.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to go there.
No, at any time.
Okay, is Candy back at work yet, by the way?
I believe yes.
Okay.
last I heard, she had come back.
Okay. Because otherwise I was going to put down her assistant's name.
Yeah, he's good. Guy's sharp.
Yeah, I'll tell you, he did a great job having to pick up everything he picked up.
So who shall we put on there? Who would like town clerk and election registration?
Yeah, I was, I meant for the 3, unless anybody else wants to jump on those.
Oh, wonderful, Andy. So police, town clerk, election registration.
Yep.
An elected position.
Mhm. Shall we leave Mark on there, or would someone else like to work with Andy on this review?
Let's leave it for now, unless Mark, send an email to Mark when we're done and see if he wants to pull out of any of these.
Okay.
Moment, I'm going to leave him since he had volunteered for those in the past.
Yes.
And he still wishes to do that. And then give him the option of opting out.
Okay.
Heather is a good one to follow, to go in with,
Yes.
if she goes in.
Okay, no one's doing cable oversight. Oh, no, Heather is. Okay.
That's always a good one.
Do you think Gopal would be interested in that one?
I don't know if he would, but I think he might be interested in participating.
Yes, you know what? I'm going to add him to that one.
Okay.
Because you always have that argument of, should we make the cable an enterprise account?
We do?
I always ask it.
Okay. Is that an option?
Yeah, it's self-funding.
If I might,
That's true.
So Irene, do you have the time? We've got you down for quite a few here. We've got you down for conservation,
Which is
sewer,
easy, which is easy,
of course, EDC,
which is easy.
and library.
Library is the only one that takes, significant time. The others really are pretty quick. Leia's great. Paul, again, and again, he's an enterprise.
Right.
That's an enterprise thing. So yeah, no, so that's fine. If someone wants to come along, I'm happy to have them do it.
Yeah, you can meet down at the plant.
And then we have you down for the town administrator. I'm just looking at my list here.
Who's this?
And then we have you down to work with the town administrator on the various.
Right, yep, yeah, so I think, okay, that's
Okay.
enough for me.
Is anyone interested in working with Irene on conservation, sewer, library, economic development?
Conservation is a good one because of all the development that we are either doing or trying to do. And EDC is a really good one for the same reason.
Eric, do you want to do EDC with me?
Sure.
Because I know that's something you have expressed interest in, even outside of Finance Committee.
Yep, that works.
So
Yeah, just bring Amazon in, let them do it all.
So it looks like we have, Barry, are you working with Mark on school?
I think I'm still stuck on that, yeah.
And Eric, are you interested in that as well?
I didn't get to do it last year, but I do want to give an opening to the 2 new members, if either of them would like to talk to Jay.
Okay. Andy, are you open to anything like that? Or you have 1, 2, 3. Or shall we put Gopal down?
I don't have any strong feelings on it, so I'm happy to go in, or if we want to assign that one to Gopal, I'm fine with that too.
That's a good one to prepare for because he has so many different things going on there.
Okay.
Yeah, take it if you can, Andy. It'll it's a big chunk of our budget, so.
Okay, I'll take that one then.
Okay.
I assume nobody's trying to fleece me on these and tell me that they're very fun and very important when in fact it's just because nobody else wants to go.
Never.
It's a time thing. Okay, so Eric, are you
all fun.
stepping back from this one?
Yeah, I will.
Oops.
Okay.
Andy, they're all fun and exciting.
They all have their own, they get interesting. The very
So-
first one I did was DPW with Sue all those years ago.
Right. So I will send this list out to everyone. So everyone can see who they will be assigned to, and no one needs to do technically anything until after you receive the proposed budget from Carter. And so what we would do is after the 10th, it's kind of a go to and meet your departments. And then we would need to decide what we want to do, how we want to approach the full finance committee public hearings to review the budgets.
Okay.
So that's, I really don't see the Saturdays as, that's my opinion. I have the time, so I don't want you to think that I don't. But I would think that if we have the time, what's better for you folks? An hour on Wednesday night, once a week for a month, something like that? Or a more condensed time frame?
I'd prefer the more condensed. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about everybody else, but I don't have a lot of weekend plans. So it's just easier for me to mark off a Saturday for 4 hours or whatever it is instead of weeknights and all the, stuff you have to do then.
Okay.
I also
That's
like
my opinion.
focusing and not having to constantly stop.
Yeah.
Gear up, do some few things, gear down, next week, start over again. It's nice to say, sit down, plow through it, and get quite a bit done.
Okay, so you're pro Saturdays.
Yeah.
Okay. That's 2 of you.
Yeah, I guess I kind of also would lean toward Saturdays, but not very strongly.
What would you be open to, Dan?
I'd be open to doing a series of weeknights too. I'm just saying I would slightly prefer doing the longer stretch on Saturdays.
Okay.
Carter, when does the new finance director start?
She starts on Monday, February 2nd.
Oh, boy.
We have been including her in some transition matters. And the new TA is scheduled to start on February 22nd. I believe, which is a Monday, I believe, if I remember correctly.
That looks like it's correct.
And they have
Has the town of Munson declared war on us yet?
I was just going to say, I have jokingly suggested to people that that they not speed through the town of Munson with a Grafton driving license. Munson had a succession plan in place, and so they've already elevated someone into the finance director's position from in-house, is my understanding. And they have retained Bernie Lynch, who did your search. And they'll be hiring a interim. So I think they're in decent shape. I think you're in fairly decent shape as well as these things go. Having so many key staff positions vacant going back to June. And now over the last couple of weeks, so many of our staff down with COVID. has certainly not made things easy. So it is going to be a bit of what I've come to refer to as a hot mess getting you through the budget this year.
Yep.
Irene, may I follow up on something that Barry asked about?
Yes.
So yes, you can make your cable a fund an enterprise fund, and that is generally recommended by DLRs, DLS, and I would certainly suggest that you give it strong consideration. I think that the more you can isolate functions and deal with them from an enterprise fund basis, it actually makes the accounting a lot simpler and cleaner. I know the idea of the prior administration had been to kind of show this one giant picture. You can still show it, but when you separate things out in the funds, you can just do a single consolidation page that would present the same thing without having as many potential lack of transparency is what I think you have right now. So I would strongly urge you to consider enterprise fund at some point in the near future for the cable fund.
Yeah, I've heard two arguments on that, and what I've noticed with our cable operation is they have put a lot of things into the municipal center that might be challenged if you were a separate proprietary account or an enterprise account. So I think the way they're doing it now, they're commingling some things. I think it's fine. I think it's good.
Happy to have that discussion with you offline anytime, Barry, just to, I would say drop the dime, but I think that would show my age.
Okay. Any other items for discussion or thoughts on the schedule? So Susan, the only thing you wanted to do was get the assignments. You weren't looking to set any additional dates, or were you?
I'd love to know what you folks think the dates would be. Just looking at, I think that I would suggest starting maybe the week of March 1st. So if maybe we would do the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th, or something like that, or to give you folks a chance to meet up with everyone through February. But you also could start on the 27th of February, for example.
Yeah.
And do the 27th. You know, you could skip a week and do the 13th of March, and skip a week and do the 27th
Okay.
of March. As soon as we have a little bit of time on this, but not too much. Well, we do, of course, because once the 10th hits, then I would be sending out the letter of correspondence to the department heads saying, this is your people. You know, this is who will be meeting with you. They'll be contacting you in such a manner. And if it's Zoom, we're going to have to make sure, you know, I set everything up for you, which is not hard or not difficult, but it kind of makes a little bit more of a finite situation. But you can meet by phone calls. So however you would like to meet your department heads is up to you. And then we would just
have to do it through the town Zoom, or can we do it ourselves?
Carter, I don't know the answer to that.
If you're just meeting with the department head, you're sending one or two people off, I wouldn't consider those. I would consider those liaisons and not subcommittees, and thus not subject to the OML. So I think you can communicate in any fashion that works for you all. If you're going to have email exchanges, those you should preserve for the record as you do now.
Right.
No, and the Zoom wouldn't be for public TV. It would just be for your convenience technically.
Right, okay.
So if you met, Barry, for example, if you were available at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so is your department head, you certainly could utilize Zoom at that time to visit. And it doesn't have to be recorded. Is that correct, Carter? I know what you just said, but am I?
I would consider these liaisons, not subcommittees, and as such, not subject to the OML,
Yeah,
and thus not requiring minutes.
I mean,
That's
we
how
never
we've done it.
recorded.
That's
When
how
we
we
met
put it in
in
the
person,
past.
we didn't record it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't see a problem with that, quite frankly.
Okay, so they can use Zoom. They could use the finance committee or the town account.
They can use the town account. They can use their own account.
Okay.
As long as you refer to them as liaisons and you don't give any impression that they're subcommittees subject to the OML.
Okay. So anybody looking at your calendar, do you have any preference dates or dates that you know that you can't meet on a Saturday as a finance committee to hold a public meeting? Or would you like me to arbitrarily pick March 6th, March 13th, and March 20th?
Yeah, let's go with those and then just, run it by the other members who are not on the call.
Right, and then the advantage is that way if we have to change one, we've left the 27th open.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll send this out to everyone with these dates. And if
Yep.
anyone, something comes up, basically, like I said, after 2:10, literally I'm pushing the button to send out a department email to everyone, a memo to everyone, like I always do, saying who you have been, whose department each finance committee member has been assigned to, and that they will be in touch.
Okay.
Okay. And then I will also set up the dates and times, 3/6, 3/13, 3/20. Also, I'll list that with them. And if they have a problem with, we can rearrange the schedule as needed. Or if you folks have a date that you're not going to be in attendance, yet your department that you interviewed privately or one-on-one is going to be in attendance, then we can amend the agenda as well.
Okay.
Great, sounds better than last year. I never canceled so many meetings in my life. These poor people, the department heads, I'm sure they don't even want to hear from me this year. It was a yes, it was a no, it was a no, it was a yes. And really, we did not have a public meeting to review department heads last year at all. It's a really tough year.
Okay, is there any other business?
I think we have the agenda covered.
Yep, I think so. So I am going to
I move.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second.
Okay, the motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. It is the one motion which is not followed by discussion. We will go for a roll call vote. Barry Smith.
Aye.
Eric Swenson.
Swenson, aye.
Dan Kusher.
Aye.
Andy Jefferson.
Jefferson, aye.
Irene Houle, aye. I declared the motion carried. We are adjourned.